Very good afternoon, good morning. Welcome to the online trading webinar with myself, Giles Cochran. Hope everybody's doing well. Just going to make sure I've got the squawk on. It's US-China trade news is going to be the big driver today. So I noticed yesterday that the market sort of struggled to get going. Let's just make sure that, yeah, that's it. Just making sure everything's on. There we go, that's better. All right, folks, let's just start looking at the fundamental overview. Two things, US and China having trade talks in London for a second day. Trump has sort of said that China's not easy. There were some positive comments from Besant, I think, after the meeting, but sentiment's very much in the balance here. If the US-China trade talks go well, that's going to be positive for risk. If they go badly, that's going to be negative for risk. So markets are conscious of that. We also have the CPI print coming tomorrow on Wednesday. You can see here, US CPI print. Wednesday at 1:30, and that could be a big market mover. It should be benign. Inflation should be continuing lower. So obviously it'll be a surprise if it isn't, and that'll be what to look for. The other thing that's really getting markets' attention this morning is this bond auction coming up at 3. I think ING was saying they reckon about 25% of these auction holders are foreign investors. And so what markets can be looking at is what's the demand like for it. Some of the key things to look for is this bid to cover ratio. The higher that is, the better. The bid to cover ratio is just simply the ratio of buyers relative to the supply. Let me just see if I've got the calculation here. So the BTC ratio, bid to cover ratio, is simply the total bids received divided by the total amounts offered, right? So if this is a bid to cover ratio here of 2.56, it means that investors bid 2.5 times the amount of bonds available, right? So if this is 1, if this came at 1, that would show weak demand. So if this comes up at 1, then that would be weak demand. You'd expect dollar weakness, you'd expect downside in equities. The high yield is the highest yield that was offered. And obviously the higher the yield, that means the higher the offer to get people to buy. And the higher that is, the worse it is. So they're the couple of things. The other thing to look at is the tail of the bond auction. And if the tail is weak.
And some reporters just noting that the lunch break is over in those US-China trade talks, so they are expected to resume now again.
All right. So US-China trade talks getting going. If the tail is very weak, small, that's strong. But if it's very large, that seems a weak auction. So people will be talking about the tail. A large tail shows less demand. A low bid to cover ratio shows less demand. And the higher the yield, that means the higher the yield that has to be offered. Markets are very focused on this. And it's all part of that sell US narrative. Are foreign investors still wanting to buy US bonds? That's the big question. The FOMC last meeting said yes, they do. And now, but the market's very sensitive. Is that really the case? So kind of another day of careful on the headlines. The key thing to be looking at here is the E-mini. Now you can see here the E-mini on the hourly chart, right? Price trying to push above this developed value area high from last week and broke down yesterday. It's trying to push above, finding resistance. Look at the cumulative delta, it's negative. We are also up at this value area high. So if we can push up, down and up, that's fine. But at the moment, we're in kind of a selling area. If you look on the 15-minute chart, you can see here price has moved up again, this developed value area from yesterday and the day before. We've moved into that area and then we've pulled back, and see as we've gone into that area, look, sellers have been building on the 15-minute chart, right? Cumulative delta, look, it's drifting lower from the Globex open. So sellers are here more than buyers are here. And if you drop down to the 5-minute chart, it's exactly the same situation. And you see sellers have trapped buyers up against that level, and prices continuing to sort of grind down from here. Now, what we'll be looking for here is something very clear, something very obvious.
Fitting with early reports, but EU's von der Leyen says they are ramping up pressure on Russia of the 18th package of sanctions, targeting energy and banking sectors. It does also note, in fitting with prior reports, the European Commission does propose restrictions on Russia's Nord Stream gas pipelines. and also proposes to cut the Russian oil price cap to $45.
Okay.
And would be down from the $60 a barrel previously.
On the 5-minute chart, you can see some sellers trapping those buyers, but we need to see something clear. And ideally, pushing above this level, seeing those sellers get trapped, that could be very nice. Okay, so we'll take a look at that at the open. Similarly, if we go underneath this 60-12 region, then we've got to move back on the cards back down to 6,008. So that's what I'm looking for as we come into the open. We'll just keep it on the 15-minute chart. The 5 and the tick chart will be more relevant if we continue to go higher. Let's just see, hang on, that should be...
Just further on the EU sanctions towards Russia, does propose to list more shadow fleet vessels and oil trading companies.
Point of control also sat there. So kind of sat in a nice area, but notice that drop from yesterday? That's sort of dominating at the moment. And the key area will be either pushing above 60.20, sellers trapped on the way up, or pushing down below 60.12 for a move down there. And obviously if we can get below 6,006, then that opens a run back down to 5,991. So that's what I'm looking at as we come to the session. I will be back here for 2 o'clock. I'm going to leave the 2:30 for the open, make myself a cup of tea. I'm just going to keep the squawk on. Hang on. So the squawk will be on. And obviously we're looking for US-China trade news. Any positive news, then look for immediate upside in the E-mini. Well, one thing that did grab my attention was this stock here, Casey. It's worth just looking at it. This stock beat on its top and bottom line. Its earnings per share and revenue topped expectations, and it's raised its quarterly dividend by 14%. So you can see that this stock, you can see the pre-market is actually off the screen. It's like 10% higher. See there, the pre-market is there at what, 494. So that could be a nice kind of stock to potentially look for a breakout trade. When you see this, like, and often it comes on these kind of dividends news, is like, you see that was most likely would have been strong earnings report. You see strong volume, price breaks out, and then you have this sort of nice pullback. There would have been a nice opportunity for a potential flag pattern there. Now, you might have taken that flag pattern here, breaks out on volume, could have had to stop the other side. You would have got stopped out with that one. But it's worth looking at those kinds of, you can see here another kind of price breaks out. You get a pullback, breakout on a flag. You probably would have had time to go to break even, or certainly move stops. So just be an interesting one to see. Just something I've got on my radar. I'll have a look at it, see how it develops. The hourly chart is important here. Particularly, you can see we did get some sellers trapped there, but the sellers were trapped, but the delta was lower. So just notice that a bit of a divergence. And sellers building here. So you want to see those sellers trapped. And if they get trapped at the start, then that would be suitable for going long up. I wouldn't mind going long on that at the open. So I'll just keep that there. That's what I'm looking for. See if buyers can come in and trap some of these sellers down here. I'm just going to wait. I want to see these sellers get trapped. Because I can see sellers trapped here. Cumulative delta positive. Buyers have trapped these sellers. Just want a bit of evidence that these sellers are getting trapped. And that'll be my first twig in. So some sellers have tried to pull back just to say, look, we're faking it out. But let's see. I want to see them get trapped. If these sellers get trapped, I'm going to go long underneath the point of control with my stop. Now that's a potential attempt just to shake out weak hands, but that 5 minute, that's pretty strong. So you might get a flush down here, but I'd expect buyers. There wasn't much volume, was there, going higher? But this would be a great area for longs. All right, just gonna keep an eye on this. Let me try and show you something on Head and Shoulders. I've written some pieces on it. Mark Anthony might help. Let's have a look. Mark Anthony, that is some of the pieces I've written on the Head and Shoulders pattern on when I was working as the chief market analyst for HYCM. Check that out. I'm going long there. So what I've got those buyers that come in, trap those sellers. See, I was looking at these 5 minute guys here, those 5 minute buyers, right? Trap those 5 minute sellers. I've got a pullback. I was looking for the first evidence of them being trapped, and I saw that evidence here on this tick chart at the moment, and you can see volume starting to come in now. So let's see if we get any movement here. Now we're trying to go back above these highs. Okay, let's see. And if we can get above those, so that's nice. Hitting that standard deviation, but delta turning positive.
And just be aware on the US fiscal front, Republican Senator Curtis, just speaking about the budget bill, says it should ease start date requirement for clean energy tax credits.
Right, we've now got a breakout above that 15-minute range again here. Let's see what the volume was like on that. Not bad. There were some interested buyers there. So I just got my stop at 60.2125. We're going to have a little bit of hassle up here because you've got that standard deviation. So I'm going to hold that and let's see what we get. And now you've got these sellers trapped here, these sellers trapped here, all sellers now trapped. 15-minute. This will be important. So we've hit the standard deviation, a little bit of a pullback on that, which is what you'd expect. And now we see cumulative delta still picking up, steady buyers there. This point of control has to hold for this to be valid. That's still fine for buyers. There's nothing really for a panic there. Let's see that. I see buyers coming in here. Just happy to try to take this higher. Delta, quite nice little pullback, dip in volume, and now on balance volume moving higher and an uptick in volume.
So just to acknowledge some commentary on the trade front, US, India have held talks on market access and digital trade. Talks are progressing well, according to an official.
Bit of positive sentiment. Back to that standard deviation. It just checks things on the 5, that's fine. Check it on the 15, yeah. So if you get these buyers trapping these sellers, then that's good for more upside. So yeah, that's great. So still happy to hold this. Standard deviation capping prices for now. Delta trying to build here. Nice inside bar pin bar. That's quite nice for a potential breakout move here. Just very small technical price action set up there. Inside pin buyers dominating. Cumulative delta still pushing higher. Yeah, that's fine. Delta looking nice if that can come in really strongly now. Let's have a look. A strong run here would be great. Oh, cap by the standard deviation again. It's going to have a thinking about it. Hits the standard deviation. Some of those late buyers got trapped. Let's see how long they'll hang around. It may not hang around long. And you can just see on balance volume moving lower. There's a little weakness coming in now. Doesn't change the outlook, but just to note there's a bit of weakness coming in now. So we're moving back to where these sellers were tested here. So you'd expect this to be defended. Cumulative delta still picking up. It's a divergence, so price is higher, but the delta is lower. So that's what the dot is. Sort of lower prices, but higher delta. You would expect this to be moving high. The delta is pushing up, steadily. So I still favor the buyers. It could just be a little pullback here. Let's see how this 15-minute level holds. There's not a whole lot of sellers here now, Jim, is there? On the 1 minute, it's buyers dominating still. The delta is really positive, isn't it? Let's see if we can push above these areas. Oh dear, like another rejection of those highs. Delta's still tracking higher. Buyers are dominating here. It's definitely trying to hold, and it's holding above this value area high. So you think, okay, just keep holding, On balance, what I'm trying to move up. Let's see if this can be a breakout here. No, go on. That's so close, isn't it? Just peering over the edge. Is this it? Because let's see, we've hit the standard deviation now. I'm just out of break even on that. It's just taking a little bit too long.